I'm doing today is making some barn doors. So I'll take you through the process and show you what we're going to be doing today. Alright, so let's grab one of the doors. Now, because these doors are a hollow core, they're quite light, but there's really not much to really fix them to in the middle if you're using nails. So what we're going to do is make sure we use some liquid nails to actually glue the boards to it. You get a little bit of meat on the side, probably about 40 mil top and bottom, which you can nail into quite securely. So we've got to make sure too, when we put the bands in for the actual sliding mechanism, we've got to make sure that it doesn't go into the hollow part of the door and it goes into the solid part of the door, because these are quite light. Although once I put the fine lining on them, we'll probably double the weight quite easily. Alright, let's go to the table. Alright, so like I mentioned before, the door just isn't quite wide enough. So what we've got is we've got this 90 by 35, and we're going to take it down to the Triton workbench, and we're just going to simply rip it down the middle, and then we'll use half of it on one side and then half on the other side. Alright. Alright guys, so I've cut these to the exact size for each end. Pop one on each side. Now this 90 by 35 has got a rounded edge, and obviously we've got the square edge there. I could actually cut this off and make it square, but I don't want to sacrifice any more timber, so what I'm going to do is that rounded edge I'm going to use on the inside, because you're not going to see it anyway. Alright, just give it light sand. Joys of an outdoor workshop. It's starting to drizzle a little bit. Let's see how much work we can get done. Alright. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to use this to take it in, but we will probably screw it as well. Now, we're very lucky that this is exactly the same width. This is exactly the same width as the door. Alright, so we'll grab a couple of clamps. The ends are flush. The other side. Alright, rain's coming down too hard now. Let's pause. Alright guys, so it stopped raining, we're back. Alright, so what we'll do now is we'll pre-drill the sides and countersink them. Alright, set and repeat. Alright guys, so with the top and bottom, I've pre-drilled them, it's nice and easy. I've put the screws in as well. Let's get clip off any sawdust. Line her up. in. Now this tacking in is not necessary. Now this tacking in is not necessary. I just use it because I need a spare pair of hands, and clamps don't exactly work correctly on this. Set and repeat. All done. Now obviously if you've got the right size door, you don't need to do this. It's just because I had to oversize the door. But if you're going to use hollow core doors, again, just make sure that the area where the strapping's going to go, you're going to have something strong to go into. So now I've got an area about so wide, which is strong, so that'll be perfect. Alright, first one down, let's do the second one. Alright, all done. Now let's put the panelling on. So that'll be absolutely solid as a rock. It's got good meat on the sides, top and bottom, especially if you're going to put door mechanisms and stuff like that. So that should be cool. Really good. Alright guys, so what we're going to do now is we're going to line this door with this pine lining. Now the pine lining's got a V groove in the middle, centre, or if you flip it over to the other side, there's no groove in the centre. So what I'm going to be doing is no groove in the centre. Okay? So we've marked it somewhere. Oh, there we go. Let's do a test cut first. Now with these boards, always trim both ends, because the first cut from the factory is never going to be square. Let's check her out. Okay. Alright, so that's perfect. Alright, now with these boards, obviously, if we grab this one here, these are going to all interlock into each other. Alright, so what happens is there's a tongue and groove on these boards. So what we need to do is for the end pieces, is we need to either cut the tongue or the groove off. So what we're going to do is with this one, we're going to rip this off, just so we've got a nice finished edge. Alright, so I'll go across to the Triton and rip that edge off. Alright guys, everything's cut to size. Now with this first piece, like I mentioned, I've chopped the edge off. Normally everything has a tongue and a groove. With this one, I've cut the actual groove off. Okay, so that's going to be my first board. Okay, so that'll go there. Now, what I would do is just roughly lay them all out like this. Like so. Now the last piece in particular has to be cut, so we'll leave that for last. Alright? Now just look over your boards, make sure you're happy with the pattern with all the knots and so forth. Just mix things up a bit. Alright, like so. Alright, so that's how we're going to go. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stack these up in order. We're going to start with that edge first. Alright, and don't forget what we're going to be doing is liquid nailing and using the nail gun. But keep in mind that this is a hollow core door. So basically only the outside about probably 18mm all the way around. It's got something worthwhile nailing into. Otherwise, it's really just to get it pressed down a little bit and just hold it in place. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get the other door and actually pop that on top just to weigh it down a little bit so it can sort of dry overnight. Alright, but before we get started, let's get a brush and just dust the surface off, and let's get the glue. Alright guys, the rain's gone away. Time for the install before it starts raining again. Alright, so let's grab the boards and the brush. Just give everything a quick clean. Make sure there's no dust. Now we're going to use liquid nails. Like I mentioned before, the door itself is hollow, but all the outsides and the top and bottom are secured. So when you pop nails into it, that'll secure it across all the outside. But in the center, it's just more about helping the glue sit down, and then we'll put a heavy weight on top as well. All right. This one's empty from the other door. Put a little bit extra on this one, just on the edge. Alright, so we'll line this one up with the outside edge. Make sure it's tight. So once you do the two ends, do the center, just in case it's bowed a bit. Then secure on the edge. Now with this tongue and groove, what we're going to do is we're going to pop these nails in on an angle. Grab the next board. Always make sure clean surfaces. And then set and repeat. Now make sure you always check, because these boards have the V in the middle or no V, that you're doing the right thing. Alright, now the last one's a little bit different. So with this one, don't put the glue on it. Let's lock this one in place. Now, if everything's all happened perfectly, the overhang on this is going to be exactly the same at this end as it is at this end. If it's not, don't be stressed about it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go pencil. Now we're going to make sure that this board is pushed up against this groove, so there's a nice consistent no gap, and then we'll just run the pencil underneath. Take it out. Check. Perfect. Now, at the end of the day, if it was a mil out, half a mil out, whatever, you can still just run it through the rip saw, cut it a nice straight line, and then when you buzz it in, you can just adjust it so it's flush with the edge. Or at the end of the day, you just take the plane into the edge. Either way, so don't stress about it. Alright, let's cut off this little strip. Alright, let's clean it up, same process as before. Would you believe I ran out of glue? A little bit too heavy on that one. Alright. Also, one of the reasons I'm using the liquid nails instead of just wood glue is because I'm expecting these boards, again, if you want to put a lot of weight on it, clamp it down, push it down, you can use wood glue. But because the pine moves a little bit, I'm expecting the liquid nails to be a heaps better option. But if you've got heaps of clamps, like I know a lot of people do out there, go crazy. Now, like I said, if you've cut it a fraction too small, just pull it out a little bit. No one's going to notice it in the crack, in the tongue and groove. Just make sure the outside is flush. Alright, and that's it. She's all done. So it was pretty simple. Ready for the next step. Alright, so now later on, what we can do, I'll give you a quick tour. So it's got quite a nice finish. I think it's got really good. And it's good I've put the pine all the way around. It's going to give it a nice solid finish. So what we'll do, we'll fill up all these. We'll fill up all these holes. Then we'll run the planer down the side, just to give it a nice finish. If you don't have a planer, you can just use a belt sander or an orbital. But that's looking hot. I like it. All right, on to the next steps. The next steps make it look sexy. All right, guys, what we're going to do now is going to take 2 pieces of these and we're going to form the frame around it now. So the first 2 pieces, again, like before for the edge, we're going to have to take the groove off, but this time we're actually going to take the tongue off as well. Okay, and then we'll do that for all the pieces of trim that are going on top, and then what will happen is that will then get nailed onto this to give it that sort of 3-dimensional effect. There'll be one there, again one there, one across there, one across there, one across there, whatever design you like. All right, let's take those to the Triton and rip them down. All right, so these are 140 boards. So we're going to rip them at 130, then flip them over the other side and rip them at 120, and that'll take 10 mil will take the tongue and groove off both sides. All right, guys. So before we proceed to the next step, we're just going to run the planer down the side. Obviously, before you do that, I've made sure that all those screws I put in the side are countersunk deep enough. I'm only going to take a couple of mil off the side, but just to be safe. And also those brads that I popped in, hole punch those. Trusty hole punch. And I've popped those in because we don't want to ruin the blade on the planer. Alright, let's go. Alright, now one thing you to be careful of is that when you're going on the grain here, you'll have no issues. But with this end piece here, I've got a bit of end grain at the end. I'd suggest you be very, very careful or else you'll blow it out. Otherwise, just use a hand sander or a hand plane. Alright, great. Let's do the other side. Alright guys, so before we, what I'm going to do is, before I put the panelling on, I'm actually going to paint this prior to the panelling going on, just to make it a bit easier. I still haven't decided what colour, but what I'm going to do is now is just fill all the knots, just with some timber wood filler. Done. Alright, so that won't take long to dry, then we'll give it a light sand and then get it ready for painting. Alright guys, so what we're going to do now is we're going to put a groove in the bottom of the door, basically for this tracking system. So this is left off over from another job, so basically that's going to end up going in the groove and being a guide to the base. So just with our router, we've got our guide fence. Now, it doesn't matter where you put it in the bottom of the door, anywhere is fine. I'm just putting it roughly centre in the new piece of timber that I put in. Obviously, I've removed the screws that were there previously whilst the glue was drying, and I've hole punched, there was only 2 nails in there, 2 brads, I've hole punched those as well. So for the first run, we're only going in about 3 or 4 mil deep, and then the second run, because the bit is quite skinny, so you don't want to snap or bend the bit. So do multiple runs. Alright guys, so there you go. Nice straight level groove all the way along. Alright. Alright, so the only thing that's important when I mention position, obviously the position in one door needs to be the same as the position in the other door. Okay, so whatever the setting you've got your router on, make sure you maintain it for the second door. Alright, that's done. On to the next step. Alright guys, so the wood fillers have plenty of time to dry now, so what we're going to do is now give it a light sand. I really like this sander, the Ryobi. The only thing I regret is I never got cordless. I ended up getting the cordless belt sander and the planer, but for some stupid reason I went and got the corded one. Anyway, if you want to check out reviews and all of those, check out the description below or the annotations above. So yeah, don't make the same mistake I did. You can see how painful the cable is. Alright, we'll give that a clean up and then send it off for painting.